Hello guys, and welcome to Supreme Ruler Ultimate. Have you ever started this game up and run into the problem playing a democracy where you don't know how to win your own elections? Because I have looked at the player base of these games and I found that this is a question that gets asked a lot. How do I win my election? How do I win an election? My domestic approval is so low. Let's talk about that today. So when you're playing a nation like a democracy in Supreme Ruler Ultimate, you will occasionally have to win elections. For example, mine here is in 1940. For some reason, the game completely skips over the one in 1936. I tried to get to that point so I could simulate it, but it didn't work. The game doesn't simulate it. But when there is an election, you'll have a little thing here telling you, as well as some pop-ups on the side, telling you your chance of winning. And now every democracy in this entire game runs off the same three-party system. Every country has three parties, and you are trying to have your party win every single time. Your domestic approval is sort of a simulation that you can look at to get an idea of how much of your population supports you. It's not exact. You can only really see that exact number when the polls are running for the upcoming election, which is only in a very narrow time frame leading up to the election. So, for example, a 41.4% domestic approval rating is actually incredibly high. I let this game run for almost a year now. If we go look at the domestic approvals in the world, you'll see the top percentile of AI who are just simply trying to make their population happy barely get over 40%. Most of them, if we go down the middle, are somewhere in the 30s, and some of them drop into the 20s as well. Well, I will tell you, somewhere around 30% generally is all you actually need to win an election. Especially as a player, when you have the intelligence to min-max a little and focus on just winning an election as you need to and using other money to do things wisely instead of taking out a bunch of debt like the AI are doing, you don't need to aim for the big heights of the most liked countries in the world with the highest domestic approvals. You could just aim for what works. So generally, usually, somewhere around 30%, 35% maybe if you want to be real careful, this is generally what you're going to be aiming for. Now, how do you get your country to vote you into office every 4 years? And what happens also if you lose? Well, simply, if you lose, it's either game over or you convert your country into a dictatorship and take all the economic and etc. penalties that come with that. Democracy is actually a pretty beneficial government type to have in this game. A dictatorship is the worst government type to have in this game, and communism is barely a step above that. There's theocracies and monarchies as well, which are both pretty decent, but generally speaking, the easiest one to play might be a democracy. I'm not going to get too in-depth or in detail with that though. Let's go look at what you can do to win your elections, raise your domestic approval rating, raise the amount of individuals that are voting for you. So first and foremost, should be obvious, taxes. There's a lot of different taxes here. Some of them affect your domestic approval more than others. The most notable ones are low income tax, of course. There's also pension tax, property tax, and unemployment tax. These are the taxes that your population hates the most. The average worker, the ones that's buying your goods domestically, these are your voters, and these are the taxes to target them if you want them to like you better and vote more. These are the ones you lower. Additionally, you could also go out of your way to make sure high income tax is higher set than low income tax, because that will actually give you a little bit of an extra effect as well. If this is already overwhelming to you, I will alert you that you can just go to your cabinet, go to custom priorities and set, where is it here, domestic approval, and let your AI take care of everything. So long as you're not locking your AI out of things and you're having your nation be run mostly in automation, he will do a pretty good job of getting you a very high domestic approval, and even without that, he might do a pretty good job by default. But assuming you're trying to manage this by yourself, let's go on to social spending. Same thing here. Some things affect more than others. Some of the biggest things that have an effect here would be social assistance, which is very expensive in some settings in this game. Cultural subsidy plays a part. Environment has an effect as well. Things that don't really affect it a whole lot would be something like infrastructure. That doesn't really have a big effect on the actual approval rating and thus the voter base that will be voting for you. So if you tackle like specific social spendings like that, that could help you as well. Another thing is going to be the domestic prices of your goods, which you can set in the industry controls for specific goods such as agriculture, timber, oil, consumer goods, and electricity, and I believe that's it. actually coal as well. This one should theoretically be really obvious. The less your population has to pay for something, the happier they'll be. If they're paying no uptick in cost, they're going to be pretty happy. If they're paying a 100% uptick in cost, they're going to be pretty unhappy. If they're paying less than it even costs to make it, well boy, they're going to be joyous, partying, and in the case of agriculture, pumping out babies left and right. So if you're needing another boost, one thing you can definitely go ahead and do is try lowering your domestic prices, especially if you have these locked and your AI is not managing this for you. Try to go ahead and lower that. There's another thing here to do that if you're not doing the domestic approval setting for your minister. If you want to specifically, for example, tell him to decrease domestic prices, have him automate this much, and then he will try to improve civilian approval and their demand by lowering the prices over time. But it might be easier to just set this yourself and handle the industry yourself. Really up to your playstyle though. The next really good way to make your population happier is don't be a warmonger. No matter how justified your war is, generally you don't want to declare war on another country. Now, you can get away with a boost if you have 100% war justification to a country, but you'll only get that in very rare circumstances. If you have the average 70% or maybe less, or even 80%, your population is not going to be very happy if you go around declaring war. You're going to take a hit to tourism, your economy, the world market, the world, and your population. Thus, also, shooting nukes at someone is going to make your population unhappy because they're going to be like, bro, what the fuck? That's not nice. And with that, this is not actually that in-depth of a feature, mechanic, or topic, so I've explained all the biggest ways to really take care of this already. If you are playing multiplayer, there are maybe a couple other tricks to this. For example, you can get your domestic approval higher by having other players go to your country and support your government. More money they put into it, the more your population will become happy, and thus the easier it will be to win your elections. Simultaneously, if you're playing multiplayer, and no matter what you do, your domestic approval just keeps going down and down and down, you might want to see if those other players are opposing your government, because that will have the inverse effect. And I've used it, I've weaponized that before, and it is fun. So I wouldn't be surprised if your friends did it too. And with that, you generally know everything there is, anything important there is, to winning elections and managing your domestic approval. So I hope this guide was helpful to you. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.